Hello and welcome to the World Miracle Peace Experiments, Conversation about Peace. I'm your host, MarBeth Dunn, and I'm so thrilled today to have with us Rhoberta Shaler, Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. She is the Relationship Help Doctor, and she provides urgent and ongoing care for relationships in crisis. And her mission is to help people stop tolerating abuse, which is a really wonderful thing. She's the author of about 16 books, including Escaping the Hijackal Trap and Stop That's Crazy Making. She also is a certified yoga Romani in the Shivananda tradition, and she's been a minister in the Centers of Spiritual Living and New Thought Centers for more than 30 years. Rhoberta, I am so thrilled to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted that I could be part of all this. It's so exciting what you've done.
Oh, it really has been exciting. It's been quite a ride.
I'm sure.
I'm really excited to have you on here because I find that every one of our conversations about peace offers a completely different perspective from everyone else's. And I'm sure this is not going to be an exception. You trained as a yoga instructor in the Shivananda tradition, but it has a different name, Romani. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it is an unusual term, MarBeth, and I was surprised when it appeared on my certificate, actually, but this is a very traditional way of doing yoga, the Shivananda tradition, and that is the name that you give to people who have done extensive work in Raja Yoga. So it's not just asana practice. It's the breathing, it's the meditation, it's all parts, the 8 paths of Raja Yoga. So very intense training, and I was very, very delighted to meet the person who I first met through a book when I was 19, and I promised myself that I would study with him, and I did, and he handed me my certificate and gave me my spiritual name. And I had no idea that he was just about to make his transition.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Was that Shivananda?
No, that was Swami Vishnu Devananda.
Swami Vishnu Devananda. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, direct disciple of Shivananda.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm a yoga instructor also, Kundalini Yoga, and we also go through the breathing, the different meditations, and it's different, very different from Hatha Yoga. I always felt it was the bullet express of yoga because it's so powerful and uplifting and definitely elevating. So, and I know they're both Raja Yoga traditions, so that's pretty cool.
It is. Yeah, I started studying yoga when I was 19, long before anybody in Canada had ever mentioned anything. A book fell off the library in the small town that I lived in, and I was always living out in the Dewey Decimal System in the 100s, trying to learn things, and that's where it found me. So it's a very long time ago. Yeah.
It's interesting, too. I started doing Hatha Yoga when I was about 12. I found a book.
Yeah.
I was doing the different asanas, so I guess there's no accidents here.
Not at all. And, everybody thought I had completely lost my mind. And what are you doing? And why would you do it? And what's wrong with you? And I had been searching for something beyond the traditional Christian path because it had the certain knowledge that there was something like even more elevated that I wanted to know, something more expansive, larger, and that would satisfy whatever it was I was searching for beyond that. And there was that book, and away we went.
Wow, that's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about the work that you're doing now. You're working with people who are in very difficult relationships, and you're helping them to access peace.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the URL that I now have used to be called sowpeace.com, S-O-W, peace.com, because all of my work is about helping people with conflict, and it always has been, because it's so important to be able to find that peace within and then know then what you can do to find peace without or to create it in a relationship, whether that's at work or at home or in your family or wherever it is worldwide. So, we're certainly aligned in more ways than just the yoga, but that's what the work was called before this last whole lot of years.
Well, that's so interesting. And it is really about finding peace. And when somebody is in a very difficult relationship, and Lord knows I've been in them.
Me too.
Yeah, with the kind of people that you are helping your clients protect themselves from. I've had those relationships too. And when you're in that difficult relationship and you're walking on eggshells, it can be very, very, very difficult to access peace because you're just being hyper vigilant.
Exactly. And if you happen to find yourself in a relationship like that, there's one of two things that is most likely to have happened. Either you've experienced that in your home life as a child, so it seems comfortably uncomfortable, or you're a person who of such goodwill that you just simply attract these people, and these difficult people that I call hijackals, relentlessly difficult people, and then you keep rationalizing and justifying and hoping, if you love them enough, if you treat them well, if you're patient enough, if you're not demanding, that they will finally feel loved and they'll relax and they'll love you back. And neither of those things actually works out in real life.
No, it doesn't.
No.
So how does that work? Do you counsel people to leave these relationships?
Well, if there's physical or sexual abuse, I certainly do.
Sure.
But if there is emotional and verbal abuse, which is always a part of all of that, what I do is I say, let's do your own work first. Because I can't think of anything less empowering than to go rushing out saying, I just want rid of this. And there you sit. You have no money, you have no possessions, you have no power, you have no strategies, you have no skills. So best to do your own work while you're in the relationship, if you possibly can. Come to a place of clarity within yourself. Come to a place of understanding where it became acceptable to you to be treated in this way and how you've maybe enabled it or encouraged it or allowed it at a minimum. And then start to learn how to set some boundaries and practice new communication techniques. And that way you begin to empower yourself. It may not change the relationship, or it may. And then after you are empowered and you feel strong and you know how to maintain non-negotiable boundaries, then you make the decision if you're going to leave. Because it depends, how are the children being influenced? How are you being influenced? Were you able to get back any of the financial power that a hijacker will take? They love to take over the finances in a relationship. So many things have to be looked at in order to find the sense of peace that comes with the clarity that says, I've done some things that have made this better, or I've done everything I can and it's not gotten any better. Now I need to make a decision.
Right. And I know from the situation that I was in is I gained more power and I started to look for outside help and to create different boundaries for myself. It was actually threatening to my partner. And that's a period when you really need to be careful. Because
you do need to be careful, and you do need support as you walk through that, because you're recalibrating your relationship. And so you try little things, but you need the background person to say, okay, here's what went sideways there. Try it this way. Approach it that way. Tell me the exact language he or she used when they pushed back. Let's find out as much as we can about what's possible here. And
so do you ever work with both parties together, or do you just work?
Well, we often start with both parties together because a hijackal doesn't want you to go alone. I mean,
that's very true, yes.
A hijackal wants to be in control. So yes, they'll come along, and the reason they come along is that they want to exploit, manipulate, control, persuade, seduce the therapist into believing them.
Right.
And then ganging up on their partner. And that happens to most people. It's wonderful when I hear that someone went to their first professional and the person actually saw what was going on. But most people are not meeting that in their daily work. So they don't always have that radar that allows that to be picked up early. But many of my clients have told me they've been to several therapists and been re-wounded by the therapist and their partner. And so it's very important to work with someone who actually works in this very specific field.
Sure.
But yeah, they come in and they come with their partners. And then as soon as we get to a place where there's a question about their behavior, then everything magically becomes my fault.
Of course.
Right? And then they start questioning me and how dare you and things like that. And then they try to convince their partner to leave. And because I work in packages, the packages are already purchased. So if the hijackal wants to leave, the rest of the package is for the partner. And then I can help them. So yes, they come. And sometimes we have what I call pseudo hijackals. These are people that I have to determine very carefully. They have hijackal tendencies, but they're the only tools they have in their toolbox. And they're really not happy with themselves. Like a real hijackal doesn't care. But there are certain people who just don't know any other way to be in their lives as adults. And when you give them new tools, they actually feel relieved. Now, that's the minority, I'll say, but we have to calibrate that too. Can we possibly do something new and different together? Let's find out.
And has anybody ever, come after you?
Oh, yes. Yes.
that can be you're dealing with some very nasty type of people.
Yes, they have. I think of one, I was working with the wife and the child, and the ex-hijackal happened to be an attorney. And he came for me. And he did his best. And he lost. And he was very unhappy, very unhappy. But he gave it his best shot. He called everybody he could. He tried to complain to me about me to all kinds of places, but he didn't get anywhere. But he did cause a tempest for a while.
I like to feel, that everyone is either expressing love or crying out for it. Mm-hmm. So what would you say about the people that are so aggressively difficult with their partners? Evidently, just reaching out and being loving for them and doesn't work in terms of this particular kind of aggressive behavior. So
it's more than aggressive, MarBeth. It's
manipulative.
It's manipulative, but it's pathological. I mean, these people have been badly wounded in their very early life, and they can't do it any differently. Not only do they not know how to do it differently, they can't do it differently. They can't imagine being helped. They can't imagine that they're not perfect. It shatters their ego to even think of that. So they strongly resist that. So that's one of the ways that we can tell if somebody can be engaged in the relationship or not, is that they have an interest. But, I put out a lot of graphics on Facebook. I'm very, very busy over there. And one of them kind of expresses what you're asking, which says hijackals don't have love to give you. They have uses for you. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate, but we have to come to understand that if a person really doesn't have love to give you, that they only mimic love to get what they want at certain times, and the rest of the time they're coming from this highly fearful, scared place. That you just have to really wake up and smell the herbal tea right there and say, this person doesn't have it to give. Why would I keep expecting to get it? Yeah. Right? I mean, you're not going to go to a store that's empty and hope you're going to get your groceries, right?
Right.
So it's not about shame or blame or judgment. It is what presents. If this person doesn't have it to give, and they're adamant that it's inappropriate to ask them for it, you have to actually see that reality and say, is this a healthy situation for myself or my children? And then a big question comes up in this leaving or staying question, which is, the courts are not reliable. You know, it's very important to never mistake the legal system for a justice system.
Very true.
Right? So you take a chance when you go to court. I mean, witness what's been going on in our country recently.
Yes.
So you take a chance when you go to court and you say, somebody is emotionally abusing me, someone is verbally abusing me, physically, sexually, spiritually abusing me. You take a chance. And so if you believe that your children would be better off with you and safe and away from that person, then you have to also be willing to take the chance that that person is going to lie and manipulate in the court, and they're maybe get very, very aggressive and decide that you're an unfit parent and start actions with Child Protective Services that are completely fabrications, but
Absolutely.
it happens. And then you have to just simply make the calibration that if I'm in the relationship, I can stay with my children all the time and I know what's happening and I can ameliorate the damage. But if I leave, at least 50% of the time, maybe that I do not have any access to my children to know what's being said or what is being done with them, to them.
Well, I definitely understand what you're saying, because I stayed in that situation because I was afraid that my children might be taken to Mexico and I might never see them again. Right. That was a very real possibility. So I stayed until it was a safe point to leave. So we have to make those decisions.
Yes, we do. And in the highest and best interest of the children as well as ourselves.
Of course. But I also feel, and I don't know if you've experienced this, because I work with patterns, I work with past lives, and when I work with patterns, it's more like three-dimensional, and I can, sometimes I find that patterns are ancestral, or they go back, they can go back several generations, but that they can be cleared energetically. And I know it's a different type of work than the work that you're doing, but I find also that these relationships, that the patterns that we repeat may go back into like a previous life, so that we create the situation that we're born into a particular pattern. And then, of course, we recreate this until we're able to break free and recognize it. Not recognizing it is huge, because when you're in a jar, you can't see the label on the outside. You can't read it because you're so immersed in that pattern. It can be really difficult. And I know that because I was in it. But I also find, that so frequently it can be something from another lifetime that's creating that issue. And then once that's cleared, you're free to release that pattern.
Yes, and that pattern may be being codependent and needing one of these people to complete that pattern. And then when you do the work that you do, that is no longer a necessity and the person lets go. And it's the same thing whether it's another lifetime or this lifetime. And we're going to replace a pattern that maybe happened in the home for you as a child, and it's comfortably uncomfortable in your long-term relationship, but you don't see it because your brain has been growing all that time, and that pattern went in when you had maybe very little prefrontal lobe development, or even before the parietal lobes were in place. And so you were a sensory object taking all this in, and not too many 18-year-olds come in and say, I'd like to examine everything that's been put into me in the last 18 years and see if I'd like to carry it forward. Let's
release this baggage.
So they get into the world of going to college, making a living, having a relationship, creating a family, and they haven't really examined as much as is possible, because that's just not our culture. That's not what people are encouraged to do. And so, it's often mid to late 30s before people are kind of going, I think you're in a little bit of a swamp here. This is
A
not working.
little bit.
Yeah. So, and, I always tell people, never beat yourself up for not seeing it, because you'll see it when you can see it. And then you may do a little, what I call the self-improvement samba, 2 steps forward, 1 step back for a bit.
Yeah.
And then eventually you will step in and say, no, this has to be changed.
Well, sometimes we can't move too fast. We have to move at the speed of our readiness to receive that new information, because it can just be so threatening.
Which is why I say, work together and do your own work before you make decisions, because you've got to live with it. You've got to settle in. You've got to do the what ifs. You've got to do the how does this feel? Can I actually step into this new reality? Can I step into those skills? When I try them on, what happens to me? I mean, there's a lot of growth that has to happen. So it's always great when someone can do that from within their relationship, if the abuse is not too much. But I have clients all over the world, as I'm sure you do, MarBeth, and every culture, the same thing is going on.
Yes.
I had a woman whose partner married her in the Middle East and immediately took a job in Australia to isolate her.
Oh.
Right? And then there she was, reaching out from call boxes in Australia to me, saying, how can I talk? What do we need to do? And I'm happy to report that very slowly over time, she gained independence. In the face of all odds, she actually bought herself a car, and the fury was almost endless. But, she gained some independence. She was able to deal with her children. Things changed.
Yeah. I also believe that we attract these lessons or opportunities for growth, for our own growth. And we do grow through this process. It was so interesting. Years ago, I volunteered at a shelter for abused women in Miami. And I didn't even realize at the time that was me. And here I was helping these other women. And as I started, I was helping them because I had tools, but I had not even realized the healing that I needed to do from my background. It's so interesting. We just don't even know what we need. But very often by helping others, we can discover that.
Well, I had the same thing happen. I have a doctorate in psychology. I'm sure I got all that book learning and did all that work. And I thought, okay, I'm all right. I understand the patterns. I see all this stuff. But until I actually was able to I had to develop programs and pathways for me, because they just weren't out there at the time. It's a long time ago. Yeah. And so I thought, whoa, I come from an abusive home. I come from a home where my mother was a hijackal, my father was an extreme passive aggressive, and my father's entire family, which was the only family around us, were all hijackals. So this was normal to me, that I was, on one hand they would say, oh, it's how wonderful, you're always winning, singing and piano competitions, and you're so good at school. And the other hand, it was, yeah, but why don't you lose 10 pounds? I mean, it was just this all the time.
Yeah.
It's walking the razor's edge. And the thing I hope all your listeners realize is, and if you don't, you really need to realize that in public, hijackals paint a public picture of perfection.
Yes.
But they will single out somebody close to them and create a private place of pain. So when you go to tell somebody about it's what's
hard for people to believe it. Yeah.
If you're in a situation where people know one another, they'll say, oh, how dare you? Like when I tried to say what was going on in my home, oh, how dare you talk about your mother like that? How dare you accuse your father of abuse? How dare you do that? What an ingrate you are. What is wrong with you? Well, of course you internalize that. I'm like 12 years old and trying to tell someone what's happening to me, and they're re-wounding me and pushing me back into the box,
Yeah,
so it's very
because you're not believed, you're not validated. And
No.
so that child is so damaged.
Right. And so
And
when we
we
get older,
encapsulate that within us.
mhm. So as we age, even in our work, and we get some integration and more integration, and we begin to realize, whoa, there are a lot of pieces. And only then was I able to go back and put it all together and say, now I see this. I understand why I entered relationships with people like that in my adult life. And, all the things that went with it. I've been there, done that. I've got the ugly video and the ragged t-shirt. I've, all of it, just as you were saying. And so I can walk with people, particularly who have been through that and who are in that situation, and use language that they can relate to immediately. It's not external language. It's, I know how that feels.
Yes, definitely. And so, do you encourage them to access more inner peace while they're moving through this situation?
Absolutely. And I put it this way. Come to a place where you're observing the behavior, not absorbing it.
Beautiful.
So that you do your own work, so that you can go, oh, that's interesting. There's lying going on there. Oh, that's been shifted 25 degrees from what the real story is. You start that narrative to yourself where you're validating what you're seeing.
Yes.
And so therefore, you don't have to take it on. You can go, oh, that's all about this person over here. Whether it's your mother, or a coworker, your partner, your ex, your adult child, or you have a behaviorally disordered child, whomever it is. You want to come to that place within yourself that you know yourself well enough. You know what you value. You know what your vision is for your life, because you are allowed to take up space and draw breath. And you know what your beliefs are. And you know exactly what kind of clarity you need to have in order to make decisions. So that's the first part. And then we then can use that to create some sense of observer. Like, oh, I don't have to react to that. I don't even have to respond to that. I simply need to observe it and say, what would I like to do with that? And the answer may be nothing, or it may be an affirmation of a boundary, or it may be, hijackals love to do this, MarBeth. They love to say, well, I know that you feel this way. I know exactly what you're feeling. I know what you're thinking. And so I teach my people to go, well, I doubt that, as you're not me, that you could possibly know what I think or feel. I'd be happy to tell you if you'd like to inquire.
Nice. I like that.
Right. So we get some openings. We create some openings, but we have to be not shaking in our boots when we say that kind of thing. We have to have really stepped into our own power a little bit in order to do that. So, those are very important things to help someone do, to come from that place of, I do have some skills. I do know what to say. I'm not going to get flustered and pushed around when someone tells me that they know what I think and what I should think. I'm just going to simply say out loud with no emotion, I doubt that. As you're not me, you don't know what I think and feel, but if you'd like to know at any time, please feel free to inquire.
Beautiful.
So, then you're saying, I'm not putting up a huge stop sign. I'm giving you another way to engage with me. Whether you take it or not is an observation for my clients, right? Okay,
Yes.
I've offered that 5 times. I've never been asked what I think or feel. So apparently, I could draw the conclusion that at this time, that other person has no interest in how I think and feel. They have an interest in being able to feel powerful enough to tell me what I think and feel.
Yes.
And that's not going to happen, and I'm not going to believe them.
And what I like about this is that it's not confrontational.
No.
It's just being observational and coming from a place of building up your inner strength and inner alignment with who you are, so that you do access a greater power. So this has gone so fast, Rhoberta. We could go on and on and on today, but I'm really looking forward to your meditation on Tuesday. And I want to thank you so much for being our guest host and for joining us on the World Miracle Peace Experiments conversation about peace.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I hope to see all of you viewers next time. So much love.